Today we are going to prepare tooth number 8 for an all-ceramic crown. We're going to make this preparation suitable for either lithium disilicate or zirconia, and if you did zirconia you probably would want to have a feldspathic porcelain facial cutout on that, but this design will work for either. We're going to use a rounded shoulder margin, and so we'll start with a 1557 burr, and we'll do our guide cuts with that. We'll first break contact, and then we'll do our incisal reduction. So we'll start with the mesial proximal contact. Always try to keep a little tooth structure of the tooth you're preparing between your burr and the adjacent tooth. Okay, now we'll go to the distal proximal contact. One thing we didn't do at the beginning is we were so anxious to jump into this preparation is check our occlusion, which will come into play here momentarily when we're doing our lingual concavity and our incisal reduction. So once we finish with this proximal surface here, at least with breaking contact, we'll take a look at that. All right, let's have our patient close. And we've got almost a contact. It's fairly closely approximated with the lower teeth, so it isn't completely in contact. That does have an effect on our lingual concavity part of the preparation in terms of how much we need to reduce the concavity to get the clearance that we need. And the clearance on this is a minimum of 1.5 millimeters away from the adjacent tooth. So let's go ahead and do the incisal reduction. We'll start with guide cuts, and the guideline on the angulation, obviously from a mesiodistal standpoint, we're going to prepare it pretty well parallel to the incisal edge. But we have another plane to keep in mind, and that is your facial lingual plane of reduction. And the rough guideline on that is perpendicular roughly to the long axis of the opposing incisor. So we'll be about like that. So let's do our guide cuts here first. I'll do a couple of guide cuts. We start with 2 millimeters of reduction. And then we'll connect those guide cuts. They're probably just short of 2, which is fine. We can always take a little more off. Again, at this stage, it's a little bit rough. That's okay. Connect our guide cuts a little bit more. Now we'll start on the facial axial reduction. Typically, it's going to be in 2 planes, with the gingival third being at one angle, and then the incisal 2/3 will angle in axially a little bit. So we'll start with the incisal. And you pretty much lay your guide cut just right flat on that incisal plane, and we'll do a couple of guide cuts. We'll go the depth of our burr, which is 1 millimeter. We're going to end up with a little more overall reduction than that, but we'll start with that. Take it down just a little more, and then we'll come over and do our other guide cut. then we'll do the second plane, which is going to line up very similar. Sometimes you have to extend your burr a little bit on this one. But it will line up with the axial reduction on the lingual surface. So these are the two that are going to be ideally 6 to 10 degrees tapered with respect to each other. So we'll come back and kind of get a key off of that cingulum. We'll come forward, we'll key off this area of the adjacent tooth, and then we'll go ahead and do that guide cut. Now, we want to stay a little bit supragingival on these because overall we want to end up at just a ½ millimeter supragingival on a typodont tooth. Clinically, we're going to be at or slightly subgingival with these. So we have our guide cuts. Let's connect the guide cuts now. Blend it there at the line angles with what we'll be doing interproximally. And you can kind of see the rough beginning of the two planes on the facial. And I wouldn't do, we can start our lingual axial reduction with this. Sometimes the 1557 is broad enough that it takes us in a little bit too far axially. So we'll key off of this gingival third facial plane and try to be roughly parallel, or again, just slightly tapered when we go to do the lingual axial reduction. So we'll start with this 1557. It's easy to get an undercut between these two axial walls, so we'll do just kind of a light preparation with this 1557, and then we'll finalize it with the diamond later. And extend it on around to the rest of the axial reduction that you started. We're going to start on the concavity next, and then we'll come back to those axial walls. So we want to end up with 1.5 millimeters of clearance minimum. 1.5 to 2 is kind of the range. It's very easy to sometimes reduce more toward the incisal edge, getting the clearance, and then we forget about the cingulum area and under-reduce that. One of the ways that we can check whether we're reducing enough at the cingulum is to look at the adjacent tooth and then imagine a tooth of similar size being fabricated over the preparation and make sure that we have enough thickness. It's not an exact way to measure, but you get used to looking at things with your eyes that way, and you can tell pretty closely if you have enough reduction. Trying to be just as uniform as possible, all the way from incisal to gingival. The concavity is maintained in all directions, so not only a mesial distal concavity, but there is a incisal-gingival aspect to the concavity as well. And we'll check with the patient closing together. This is one where you close frequently to check your clearances. We're a little over a millimeter now, and obviously at the distal marginal ridge we're way under reduced, but most of that's going to come off with our axial wall reduction. Patient close again. Uniformity's pretty good. We could reduce a little bit more toward the distal, so we will. We're approaching 1.5. We're probably actually in the 1.5 to 2 range. It's a little tight with this, which tells us we need to take it down just a little bit more before we're there. So let's take just a little more down. We'll refine this concavity, emphasizing taking a little more toward the distal. The final amount of incisal edge reduction is really determined by a combination of how much we reduce in the concavity to get clearance and the facial axial reduction, and then we have to shorten that incisal edge to where it's about a minimum of 1 millimeter thick facial lingually. Otherwise we can't round it very well and we end up with a real sharp edge on it. And with any ceramic preparation, you don't want to leave a sharp line angle. There, we're definitely in the zone there. And as you see, the incisal edge turns into a pretty sharp area, so we'll have to reduce that eventually. We're using a round-ended torpedo diamond. It is a 5856016. Make sure you look at the tip of the diamond. It is rounded. It's not like a chamfer diamond. Now we can start bringing our margins apically a little bit. As you go interproximally, always keep an eye on that adjacent tooth. And now we'll move to the gingival third, so we'll kind of line that up with the axis of the tooth. We'll come back to our lingual axial reduction and we'll double check it against the adjacent teeth, and then we'll come back and do this gingival third of the facial axial reduction. And you will use that diamond axially to about the full diameter of the tip on your margin area. Your rounded shoulder margin is to be approximately 1 millimeter deep axially, and you want to prevent any J-lip from forming at the margin. Sometimes, in order to avoid the J-lip, you come right out to the edge, just with the tip of the diamond, and just follow it around the margin if you need to. Let's look at it from the side, make sure we don't have a J-lip, and it doesn't look like we do. We might right over, right there at the distal buccal line angle. Yeah, our margin's a little bit light right there too, so our now we'll come to the, we've pretty much gone interproximally. We'll come back to the lingual aspect, and again it's important to line up this gingival third of the facial axial wall. Line your burr up with the axial wall on the lingual. Even though it's a short wall, it's easy to get an undercut there. So that gets our angle right. those margins have to have a nice form and flow to them, so there's no sharp angles. Looks like we're there. So our axial reduction is complete, and now the only thing we have to come back to besides rounding at the end is get rid of that sharp incisal edge. And again, we have to reduce this sharp incisal edge to where it's about 1 millimeter thick facial lingually. That will allow us to then round it, because ceramics can't, they don't do well with sharp line angles in the preparation, especially some of the weaker ceramics, feldspathic, porcelain, lithium disilicate. Overall, incisally, it's not uncommon to be reduced 2 to 3 millimeters total. We're probably close to 3 now. We have the clearance that we need from our opposing tooth. We've shortened the incisal edge now so that it's about 1 millimeter wide. And now it's very blocky, and we just have to round everything. Just with stall out in your high-speed handpiece, just take all the line angles and just round them. So there's nothing that's sharp to create a stress point with your ceramic material. And that includes transitioning from your concavity to your axial wall, which doesn't take much, just a little bit of rounding and smoothing right there. And right here. And look at it from all different directions.